Good evening. Welcome to Victorian Story Hour. I am your host, the storyteller, and this is the archive, where I seek to preserve stories from all around the world. Tonight, we shall be doing some Shakespeare, a fairy tale from the Empire of Japan, some poems from the Americas by Poe. We shall begin reading the full 1001 Nights of Arabia, as translated by Richard Burton. And finally, a reading from the diary of Samuel Pepys. Thank you all for joining, and I do hope you enjoy. Without much further ado, let us begin. From Shakespeare Sonnets, number 3. Look in thy glass, and tell the face thou viewest, now is the time that face should form another, whose fresh repair, if now thou not renewest, thou dost beguile the world, unbless some mother. For where is she so fair, whose unerred womb disdains the tillage of thy husbandry? Or who is he so fond will be the tomb of his self-love to stop posterity? Thou art thy mother's glass, and she in thee calls back the lovely April of her time. So thou through windows of thine age shalt see, despite of wrinkles, this thy golden time. But if thou live, remember not to be thy single, and thine image dies with thee. This carries on something of a theme from the other early sonnets, in which he speaks of the continuity of beauty through children, of the selfishness of not sharing that beauty with another, of being turned to inward, of giving up immortality. On to Sonnet 4. Unthrifty loveliness, why dost thou spend upon thyself thy beauty's legacy? Nature's bequest gives nothing, but doth lend, and being frank, she lends to those are free. Then, beauteous niggard, why dost thou abuse the beauteous largesse given thee to give? Profitless usurer, why dost thou use so great a sum of sums, yet canst not live? For having trafficked with thyself alone, thou of thyself, thy sweet self, dost deceive. Then how, when nature calls thee to be gone, what acceptable audit canst thou leave? Thy unused beauty must be tuned with thee, which used lives the executor to be. Another commentary on isolation, as it were, on reducing thyself to thyself, of taking, in this case in monetary terms, in economic terms, of taking too much of beauty and not giving of beauty to another. I have a feeling as we read more of these, we shall see more of this kind of imagery, of these discussions of beauty withheld. Keep an eye out for that as we go forward. But enough of Shakespeare for the moment. We turn now to another island empire, to Japan, where we have a story newly translated called The Sea King and the Magic Jewel. This is a tale beloved by the children of Japan and by the old folk, a tale of magical jewels and a visit to the Sea King's palace. Prince Rice-Ear Ruddy Plenty loved a beautiful and royal maiden and made her his bride. And the lady was called Princess Blossoming Brightly as the Flowers of the Trees. so sweetly fair was she. But her father was augustly wrath at her betrothal, for his augustness, Prince Rice-ear-Ruddy-Plenty, had put aside her elder sister, the Princess of the Rocks. And indeed, this lady was not fair, for he loved only Princess Blossoming Brightly. So the old king said, "Because of this, the offspring of these heavenly deities shall be frail, fading and falling like the flowers of the trees." So it is. At this day, the lives of their Augustnesses, the heavenly sovereigns, are not long. Howbeit, in the fullness of time, the lady, blossoming brightly as the flowers of the trees, bore two lovely men-children, and called the elder Fireflash and the younger Firefade. Prince Fireflash was a fisherman who got his luck upon the wide sea and ran upon the shore with his august garments girded. And again he tarried all the night in his boat upon the high wave crests. And he caught things broad of fin and things narrow of fin, and he was a deity of the water weeds and of the waters and of the fishes of the sea. But Prince Firefade was a hunter who got his luck upon the mountains and in the forest, who bound sandals fast upon his feet and bore a bow and heavenly feathered arrows. And he caught things rough of hair and things soft of hair, and he knew the trail of the badger and the wild cherry's time of flowering, for he was a deity of the woods. Now Prince Firefade spoke to his elder brother, Prince Fireflash, and said, "Brother, I am aweary of the green hills. Therefore let us now exchange our luck. Give me thy rod, and I will go to the cool waters. Thou mayest take my great bow and all my heavenly feathered arrows, and try the mountains, where, trust me, thou shalt see many strange and beautiful things unknown to thee before." But Prince Fireflash answered, "Not so, not so." And again, after not many days were past, Prince Firefade came and sighed, "I am weary of the green hills. The fair waters call me. Woe to be a younger brother." And when Prince Fireflash took no heed of him, but angled with his rod day and night, and caught things broad of fin and things narrow of fin, Prince Firefade drooped with desire, and let his long hair fall untended upon his shoulders. And he murmured, "Oh, to try my luck upon the sea!" Till at last Prince Fireflash, his elder brother, gave him the rod for very weariness, and betook himself to the mountains. And all day he hunted, and let fly the heavenly feathered arrows, but rough of hair or soft of hair, never a thing did he catch. And he cried, "Fool, fool, to barter this heavenly luck of the gods!" So he returned. And his Augustness, Prince Firefade, took the luck of the sea, and angled in sunshine and in gloom, but broad of fin or narrow of fin, never a fish did he catch. And moreover, he lost his brother's fishhook in the sea. So he hung his head and returned. And Prince Fireflash said, "Each to his own, the hunter to the mountain, and the fisherman to the sea. For thou and I have brought nothing home, and this night we sleep hungry. We may not barter the luck of the gods. And now, where is my fishhook?" So Prince Firefade replied, saying softly, "Sweet brother, be not angry, but toiling all day with thy fishhook, broad of fin or narrow of fin, not a fish did I catch. And at the last I lost thy fishhook in the sea." At this his Highness Prince Fireflash flew into a great rage, and stamping his feet, required the fishhook of his brother. And Prince Firefade made answer, "Sweet brother, I have not thy fishhook, but the deep sea whose bottom no man may search. Though I should die for thee, yet could I not give thee back thy fishhook." But his elder brother required it of him the more urgently. Then Prince Firefade burst the wild wisteria tendrils which bound his august 10-grasped sword to his side, and he said, "Farewell, good sword." And he broke it into many fragments, and made 500 fish hooks to give to his brother, Prince Fireflash. But Prince Fireflash would have none of them. And again Prince Firefade toiled at a great furnace, and made 1,000 fish hooks, and upon his knees he humbly offered them to his brother, Prince Fireflash, for he loved his brother. Nevertheless, Prince Fireflash would not so much as look at them, but sat moody, his head on his hand, saying, "Mine own lost fishhook will I have, that and no other." So Prince Firefade went grieving from the palace gates, and wandered lamenting by the seashore, and his tears fell and mingled with the foam. And when night came, he had no heart to return homewards, but sat down weary upon a rock amid the salt pools, and he cried, "Alas, my brother, I am all to blame, and through my foolishness has this come upon me. But oh, my brother, together were we nursed upon the sweet breast of our mother, Princess blossoming brightly as the flowers of the trees, for almost hand in hand did we come into the world." And the moon rose, so that the sea and the central land of reed plains was light. But Prince Firefade ceased not to lament. Then Shiko Suchi no Kami, the lord of sea salt, came with the rising tide and spoke, "Wherefore weeps the heaven's sky height?" And Prince Firefade made answer, "I have taken my brother's fishhook, and I have lost it in the sea. And though I have given him many other fishhooks for compensation, he will have none of them, but desires only the original fishhook. Truly, the gods know I would give my life to find it, but how should that serve?" And Shiko Suchi no Kami took him by the sleeve to where a boat moved upon the water, and set him in the boat, and pushed it from the shore, saying, "My son, pursue the pleasant path that Tsukiyomi no Kami, his augustness, the moon knight possessor, has made for thee upon the waters. And at the end thou shalt come to a palace made of fish scales, which is the palace of the great king of the sea. Before the gate there is a clear well, and by the well side there grows a cassia tree with many spreading branches. Therefore climb thou into the branches of the cassia tree, and there wait for the king's daughter, who shall come to give thee counsel." And Prince Firefade, standing up in the boat, made obeisance and thanked the lord of sea salt. But this one girded his august garments and pushed the boat before him till he was thigh deep in the water, and he said, "Nay, nay, fair youth, no thanks, only do my bidding." So his augustness, Prince Firefade, came to the Sea King's palace, and he forthwith climbed the cassia tree and waited among its green branches. At the day's dawning came the handmaidens of the Sea King's daughter, with their jeweled vessels to draw water from the well. And as they stooped to dip their vessels, Prince Firefade leaned and watched them from the branches of the cassia tree. And the glory of his august countenance made a brightness upon the waters of the well. So all the maidens looked up and beheld his comeliness, and were amazed. But he spoke them fairly, and desired of them a little water from their vessels. So the maidens drew him water in a jeweled cup, howbeit the jewels were clouded because of the coldness of the well water, and they presented it to him with all reverence. Then, not drinking the water, Prince Firefade took the royal jewel from his neck, and holding it between his two lips, he dropped it into the cup, and the cup he gave again to the maidens. Now they saw the great jewel shining in the cup, but they could not move it, for it clung fast to the gold. So the maidens departed, skimming the water like the white birds of the offing. And they came to the Sea King's daughter, bearing the cup and the jewel in it. And the princess, looking at the jewel, asked them, Is there perchance a stranger at the gate? And one of the maidens answered, There is someone sitting in the branches of the cassia tree, which is by our well. And another, It is a very beautiful young man. And another said, He is even more glorious than our king. And he asked water of us, so we respectfully gave him water in this cup. And he drank none of it, but dropped a jewel into it from his lips. So we have brought them unto thine Augustness, both the cup and the jewel. Then the princess herself took a vessel and went to draw water at the well. And her long sleeves and certain of the folds of her august garments floated behind her, and her head was bound with a garland of sea flowers. In coming to the well, she looked up through the branches of the cassia tree, and her eyes met the eyes of Prince Firefade. And presently she fetched her father, the sea king, saying, Father, there is a beautiful person at our gate. So the sea king came out and welcomed Prince Firefade, and said, This is the august child of the heaven's sun height. And leading him into his palace, he caused the floors to be spread with 8 layers of rugs, of asses' skins, and 8 layers of rugs of silk, and set the prince upon them. And that night he made a great banquet, and celebrated the betrothal of Prince Firefade to his daughter, the fair jewel princess. And for very many days there was held high revel and rejoicing in the sea king's palace. But one night, as they took their ease upon the silken floor, and all the fishes of the sea brought rich dishes and sweetmeats in vessels of gold and coral and jade to set before them, the fair jewel princess herself sat at Prince Firefade's right hand to pour the wine into his cup. And the silver scales upon the palace walls glittered in the moonlight. But Prince Firefade looked out across the sea path and thought of what had gone before, and so heaved a deep sigh. Then the sea king was troubled, and asked him, saying, Wherefore dost thou sigh? But Prince Firefade answered nothing. And the fair jewel princess, his betrothed's wife, came closer, and touching him on the breast, and said softly, O thine Augustness, my sweet spouse, art thou not happy in our water palace, where the shadows fall green, that thou lookst so longingly across the sea path? Or do our maidens not please thee, who move silently like the birds of the offing? Or, my lord, despise me not, but tell me what is in thine heart. Then Prince Firefade answered, My lovely lady, thine Augustness, let nothing be hidden from thee, because of our love. And he told them all the story of the fishhook and of his elder brother's wrath. And now, he said, will the jewel princess give me counsel? Then the jewel princess smiled, and rose up lightly, and her hair was so long that it hung to the edge and hem of her silken red robe. And she passed where the palace steps led down into the water. And standing upon the last step, she called to the fishes of the sea, and summoned them, great and small, from far and near. So the fishes of the sea, both great and small, swam about her feet, and the water was silver with their scales. And the king's daughter cried, O fishes of the sea, find and bring me the august fishhook of Prince Fireflash. And the fishes answered, Lady, the Tay is in misery, for something sticks in his throat so that he cannot eat. Perchance this may be the august fishhook of his augustness, Prince Fireflash. Then the princess stooped down and lifted the Tay from the water, and with her white hand she took the lost fishhook from his throat. And after she had washed and dabbled it for a little, she took it to the Prince Firefade. And he rejoiced, and said, This is indeed my brother's fishhook. I go to restore it instantly, and we shall be reconciled. For he loved his brother. But the fair jewel princess stood silent and sorrowing, for she thought, Now will he depart and leave me lonely. And Prince Firefade hastened to the water's edge, and there bestrode a valiant crocodile, who should bring him to his journey's end. And ere he went, the Sea King spoke, Fair youth, now listen to my counsel. If thy brother sow rice upon the uplands, do thou sow rice the low, and in the water meads. But if thy brother sow his rice in the water meads, then do thou, thine augustness, sow thy rice upon the uplands. And I who rule the rains and the floods will continually prosper the labors of thine augustness. Moreover, here are 2 magic jewels. If thy brother should be moved by envy to attack thee, then put forth the tide-flowing jewel, and the water shall rise to drown him. But if thou shouldst have compassion upon him, then put forth the tide-ebbing jewel, and all the water shall subside, and his life be spared. And his augustness, Prince Firefade, gave thanks with obeisance, and he hid the fishhook in his long sleeve, and hung the 2 great jewels about his neck. Then the fair jewel princess came near, and bade him farewell, with many tears. And the Sea King charged the crocodile, saying, While crossing the middle of the sea, do not alarm him. So Prince Firefade sat upon the crocodile's head, and in one day he came to his own place, and sprang lightly to shore. And unsheathing his dagger, he hung it upon the crocodile's neck for a token. Hereupon Prince Firefade found his brother, and gave him back his own fishhook that had been lost. Nevertheless, because of the 2 great jewels which he wore in the folds of his raiment, he had everlasting dominion over his brother, and flourished in all his doings. And after some time there came to Prince Firefade the daughter of the Sea King, the fair Jewel Princess. And she came across the sea path, bearing in her arms a young child. And she, weeping, laid down the child at the feet of his augustness, and said, My lord, I have brought thy son. But Prince Firefade raised her up, and made her welcome, and built for her a palace on the seashore, at the limit of the waves. And the palace was thatched with cormorant's feathers. So they dwelt there with the august child. And the fair Jewel Princess besought her lord, saying, Sweet husband, look not on me in the dark night, for then I must take my native shape. With those of my land it is ever so. Howbeit, look not on me, lest I should be ashamed, and misfortune should follow. So Prince Firefade promised her, and spoke many fair words of assurance. Nevertheless, there came a night when Prince Firefade lay awake, and could not get rest. And at length, when it was very dark before the dawn, he arose, and struck a light to look upon his bride as she slept. And he beheld a great scaled dragon, with translucent eyes, which was coiled up at the couch's foot. And Prince Firefade cried out aloud for terror, and dropped the light. Then morning broke, very grey, upon the sea. And at the same instant the great dragon stirred, and from its coils the Jewel Princess lifted up her lovely head. And the green scales fell away from her like a garment. So she stood in a white robe, with her child upon her breast. And she hung her head and wept, saying, O thine augustness, my sweet spouse, I had thought to have made the sea path a highway between thy land and mine, that we might go and come at pleasure. But now, though I warned thee, thou hast looked upon me in the night. Therefore, my lord, between me and thee, it is farewell. I go across the sea path, and of this going there is no return. Take thou the august child. She spoke, and departed immediately upon the sea path, weeping, and covering her face with her hair, and looking back to the shore. And she was never more seen upon the central land of reed plains. Moreover, She shut the gates of the sea and closed the way to her father's palace. But the young maid, her sister, she sent to be a nurse to her babe, and because, for all that had been, she could not restrain her loving heart, she made a little song, and sent it to her lord by the maid, her sister. And the song said, "O fair are the red jewels, and fair is the string on which they are strung. Ever so fair is my babe. But brighter far and more renowned are the white jewels, the jewels that are like my lord." Then the husband answered in a song which said, "As for thee, my lady, whom I took to be my bride, to the island where lights the wild duck, the bird of the offing, I shall not forget thee till the end of my life." Of love found and love lost. Themes we shall find in many of the tales, many of the things we shall read tonight and any night. Love tragically broken. It reminds me of Orpheus and Eurydice, if you'll allow me this discretion. Orpheus loved her so much that upon her death he descends into the underworld and plays music so beautiful that death itself and the Furies weep. And in recompense they allow Eurydice to return to the world of the living, and she shall follow Orpheus up back to life, but he can never turn and look at her on the path. And he makes it all the way to the opening of the cave, when his heart becomes filled with doubt that he's somehow been tricked. And there, upon the very verge of success, he turns and looks and sees Eurydice, and she fades back into death. Hubris, our inability to trust, to follow directions, such simple things with such large consequences. And now, for something from the Americas, something rather dark, perhaps, some poems by Poe. But this one also, the first one, The City in the Sea. Something of a nautical theme going. Lo, Death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone, far down within the dim west, where the good and the bad and the worst and the best have gone to their eternal rest. There shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers that tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours, around by lifting winds forgot. Resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. No rays from the holy heaven come down on the long night time of that town, but light from out the lurid sea streams up the turrets silently, gleams up the pinnacles far and free, up domes, up spires, up kingly halls, up fanes, up Babylon-like walls, up shadowy, long-forgotten bowers of sculptured ivy and stone flowers, up many and many a marvelous shrine whose wreathed friezes intertwine the viol, the violet, and the vine. Resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. So blend the turrets and shadows there that all seem pendulous in air, while from a proud tower in the town death looks gigantically down. There open fanes and gaping graves yawn level with the luminous waves, but not the riches there that lie in each idol's diamond eye. Not the gaily jeweled dead tempt the waters from their bed, for no ripples curl, alas, along that wilderness of glass. No swelling tell that winds may be upon some far off happier sea. No heaving hint that winds have been on seas less hideously serene. But lo, a stir is in the air, the wave, there is a movement there, as if the towers had thrust aside in slightly sinking the dull tide, as if their tops had feebly given a void within the filmy heaven. The waves have now a redder glow, the hours are breathing faint and low, and when amid no earthly moans, down, down, that town shall settle hence, hell rising from 1,000 thrones shall do it reverence. Mystical cities in the sea, rising and falling. It is delicious in its imagery. The language alone is so pleasant to speak. And now, another. Dreamland. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have reached these lands but newly from an ultimate dim Thule, from a wild weird clime that lieth sublime out of space, out of time. Bottomless bales and boundless floods and chasms and caves and Titan woods, with forms that no man can discover for the tears that drip all over. Mountains toppling evermore into seas without a shore, seas that restlessly aspire, surging unto skies of fire. Lakes that endlessly outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their still waters, still and chilly, with the snows of the lolling lily. By the lakes that thus outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their sad waters, sad and chilly, with the snows of the lolling lily. By the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever. By the grey woods, by the swamp, where the toad and the newt encamp, by the dismal tarns and pools where dwell the ghouls, by each spot the most unholy, in each nook most melancholy, there the traveller meets aghast sheeted memories of the past, shrouded forms that start and sigh as they pass the wanderer by, white-robed forms of friends long given in agony to the earth and heaven. For the heart whose woes are legion, 'tis a peaceful, soothing region. For the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis an El Dorado. But the traveler, traveling through it, may not, dare not, openly view it. Never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye unclosed. So will its kings who hath forbid the uplifting of the fringed lid. And thus the sad soul that here passes beholds it but through darkened glasses, by a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright. I have wandered home but newly from this ultimate dim Thule. The term Ultima Thule is an old one from Roman times, referring to an island north of Britain, and has come to mean a fantastical realm beyond maps, beyond the edge of the known, into the space of here be dragons. the land of sleep, of dreams, certainly would qualify as a land beyond the edge of the map. I think Poe certainly strikes on something when he speaks of it being a lonely trek, for it is a place we can only go by ourselves. There will be more Poe to come. We're simply waiting on an arrival. Now next, I would like to begin something rather epic. The Arabian Nights, all 1001 of them, which I shall endeavor to read to you, which at our current pace should take us about 20 years. And that does not count the additional 6 volumes, the silver ones you see here, of additional tales. But before we can begin that, before we can reach the tales of Scheherazade that saved her life, we must first come to understand the conditions that brought it to peril. And so we shall begin at the beginning with the kings and the conditions that brought about Scheherazade's imprisonment. And so, the beginning of the book of the 1,000 Nights and a Night. Verily, the works and words of those gone before us have become instances and examples to men of our modern day, that folk may view what admonishing chances befell other folk, and may therefrom take warning, and that they may peruse the annals of antique peoples, and all that hath betided them, and be thereby ruled and restrained. Praise therefore be to him who hath made the histories of the past an admonition unto the present. Now of such instances are the tales called 1,000 Nights and a Night, together with their far-famed legends and wonders. Therein it is related, but Allah is all-knowing of his hidden things, and all-ruling, and all-honored, and all-giving, and all-gracious, and all-merciful, that in tide of yore, and in time long gone before, there was a king of the kings of the Banu Sassan, in the islands of India and China, a lord of armies and guards and servants and dependents. He left only 2 sons, one in the prime of manhood and the other yet a youth, while both were knights and braves, albeit the elder was a doughtier horseman than the younger, so he succeeded to the empire, when he ruled the land and lorded it over his lieges with justice so exemplary that he was beloved by all the peoples of his capital and of his kingdom. His name was King Shahryar, and he made his younger brother Shah Zaman hight king of Samarkand in barbarian land. These 2 ceased not to abide in their several realms, and the law was ever carried out in their dominions, and each ruled his own kingdom with equity and fair dealing to his subjects, in extreme solace and enjoyment, and this condition continually endured for a score of years. But at the end of the 20th 12-month, the elder king yearned for a sight of his younger brother, and felt that he must look upon him once more. So he took counsel with his vizier about visiting him, but the minister, finding the project unadvisable, recommended that a letter be written and a present be sent under his charge to the younger brother, with an invitation to visit the elder. Having accepted this advice, the king forthwith bade prepare handsome gifts, such as horses with saddles of gem-encrusted gold, Mamelukes, or white slaves, beautiful handmaids, high-breasted virgins, and splendid stuffs and costly. He then wrote a letter to Shah Zaman, expressing his warm love and great wish to see him, ending with these words: We therefore hope of the favor and affection of the beloved brother that he will condescend to bestir himself and turn his face uswards. Furthermore, we have sent our vizier to make all ordinance for the march, and our one and only desire is to see thee ere we die. But if thou delay or disappoint us, we shall not survive the blow. Wherewith peace be upon thee. Then King Shahryar, having sealed the missive and given it to the vizier with the offerings aforementioned, commanded him to shorten his skirts and strain his strength and make all expedition in going and returning. "Hearkening and obedience," quoth the minister, who fell to making ready without stay, and packed up his loads, and prepared all his requisites without delay. This occupied him 3 days, and on the dawn of the 4th he took leave of his king, and marched right away over desert and hillway, stony waste and pleasant lea, without halting by night or day. But whenever he entered a realm whose ruler was subject to his suzerain, where he was greeted with magnificent gifts of gold and silver, and all manner of presents fair and rare, he would tarry there 3 days, the term of the guest right, and when he left on the 4th, he would be honorably escorted for a whole day's march. As soon as the wazir drew near Shah Zaman's court in Samarkand, he dispatched to report his arrival one of his high officials, who presented himself before the king, and kissing ground between his hands, delivered his message. Hereupon the king commanded sundry of his grandees and lords of his realm to fare forth and meet his brother's vizier at the distance of a full day's journey, which they did, greeting him respectfully and wishing him all prosperity, and forming an escort and a procession. When he entered the city, he proceeded straightway to the palace, where he presented himself in the royal presence, and after kissing ground and praying for the king's health and happiness, and for victory over all his enemies, he informed him that his brother was yearning to see him, and prayed for the pleasure of a visit. He then delivered the letter, which Shah Zaman took from his hand and read. It contained sundry hints and allusions, which required thought, but when the king had fully comprehended its import, he said, "I hear and obey the commands of the beloved brother," adding to the vizier, "But we will not march till after the 3rd day's hospitality." He appointed for the minister fitting quarters of the palace, and pitching tents for the troops, rationed them with whatever they might require of meat and drink and other necessities. On the 4th day he made ready for wayfare, and got together sumptuous presents befitting his elder brother's majesty, and stabilized his chief vizier viceroy of the land during his absence. Then he caused his tents and camels and mules to be brought forth and encamped, with their bales and loads, attendants and guards, within sight of the city, in readiness to set out next morning for his brother's capital. But when the night was half spent, he bethought him that he had forgotten in his palace somewhat, which he should have brought with him. So he returned privily and entered his apartments, where he found the queen, his wife, asleep on his own carpet bed, embracing with both arms a cook of loathsome aspect, and foul with kitchen grease and grime. When he saw this, the world waxed black before his sight, and he said, "If such case happen while I am yet within sight of the city, what will be the doings of this damned whore during my long absence at my brother's court?" So he drew his scimitar, and cutting the two in 4 pieces with a single blow, left them on the carpet, and returned presently to his camp, without letting anyone know of what had happened. Then he gave orders for immediate departure, and set out at once, and began his travels. But he could not help thinking over his wife's treason, and he kept ever saying to himself, "How could she do this deed by me? How could she work her own death?" Till excessive grief seized him, his color changed to yellow, his body waxed weak, and he was threatened with a dangerous malady, such an one as bringeth men to death. So the vizier shortened his stages and tarried long at the watering stations, and did his best to solace the king. Now when Shah Zaman drew near the capital of his brother, he dispatched vaunt courtiers and messengers of glad tidings to announce his arrival, and Shahryar came forth to meet him with his viziers and emirs and lords and grandees of his realm, and saluted him, and joyed with exceeding joy, and caused the city to be decorated in his honor. When, however, the brothers met, the elder could not but see the change of complexion in the younger, and questioned him of his case, whereto he replied, "'Tis caused by the travails of wayfare, and my case needs care, for I have suffered from the change of water and air, but Allah be praised for reuniting me with a brother so dear and so rare." On this wise he dissembled, and kept his secrets, adding, "O king of the time and caliph of the tide, only toil and moil have tinged my face yellow with bile, and hath made my eyes sink deep in my head." Then the two entered the capital in all honor, and the elder brother lodged the younger in a palace overhanging the pleasure garden. And after a time, seeing his condition still unchanged, he attributed it to his separation from his country and kingdom. So he let him wend his own ways, and asked no questions of him, till one day when he again said, "O my brother, I see thou art grown weaker of body and yellower of color." "O my brother," replied Shah Zaman, "I have an intestinal wound." Still, he would not tell him what he had witnessed in his wife. Thereupon Shahryar summoned doctors and surgeons, and bade them treat his brother according to the rules of art, which they did for a whole month. But their sherbets and potions not availed, for he would dwell upon the deed of his wife, and despondency, instead of diminishing, prevailed, and leechcraft treatment utterly failed. We shall leave them there for the moment in their suffering. Plenty more of that to come. But I think we shall conclude, as we always do, with a bit of Pepys. Again, for those who are unfamiliar, Samuel Pepys was a diarist in the 17th century during the restoration of the crown. He did survive Cromwell's regency. But he kept quite extensive diaries of his life, his activities, regardless of how mundane they might be, his associations, his political views, his dinner plans, his attendance at the theater. Because of that, because of his, how shall we say, level of detail and candor, we're able to get quite a lovely view of life during his time. And so we return to January the 7th, 1660. At my office, as I was receiving money of the probate of wills, in came Mrs. Turner, Theodore, Madam Morris, and Joyce. And after I had done, I took them home to my house, and Mr. Hawley came after, and I got a dish of steaks and a rabbit for them, while they were playing a game or two at cards. In the middle of our dinner, a messenger from Mr. Downing came to fetch me to him. So, leaving Mr. Hawley there, I went and was forced to stay till night, in the expectation of the French ambassador, who at last came, and I had a great deal of good discourse with one of his gentlemen concerning the reason of the difference between the zeal of the French and the Spaniard. After he was gone, I went home and found my friends still at cards, and after that I went along with them to Dr. Hoare's, sending my wife to Mrs. Jemima's to a sack posset, where I heard some symphony and songs of his own making performed by Mr. Mage, Harding, and Mallard. Afterwards, I put my friends into a coach, and I went to Mrs. Jemima, where I writ a letter to my lord by the post, and had my part of the posset, which was saved for me, and so we went home, and put in at my lord's lodgings, where we stayed later, eating of part of his turkey pie, and reading of Quarles' Emblem. So home, and to bed. Sunday, January 8th. In the morning, I went to Mr. Gunning's, where a good sermon wherein he showed the life of Christ, and told us good authority for us to believe that Christ did follow his father's trade, and was a carpenter till 30 years of age, From thence to my father's to dinner, where I found my wife, who was forced to dine there, we not having one coal of fire in the house, and it being very hard, frosty weather. In the afternoon, my father, he going to a man's to demand some money due to my Aunt Bell, my wife and I went to Mr. Messham's, where a strange doctor made a very good sermon. From thence, sending my wife to my father's, I went to Mrs. Turner's and stayed a little while, and then to my father's, where I found Mr. Shepley, and after supper went home again. Here I heard of the death of Mr. Palmer, and that he was to be buried at Westminster tomorrow. Monday, January the 9th. For these 2 or 3 days I have been much troubled with thoughts how to get money to pay them that I have borrowed money of, by reason of my money being in my uncle's hands. I rose early this morning and looked over and corrected my brother John's speech, which he is to make the next apposition, and after that I went towards my office, and in my way met with Mr. Simons, Muddyman, and Jack Price, and went with them to Harper's, and in many sorts of talk I stayed till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I found Muddyman a good scholar, an arch rogue, and one that, though he writes news books for the Parliament, yet he did declare that he did it only to get money, and did talk very basely of many of them. Among other things, Mr. Simons told me how his uncle Scoble was on Saturday last called to the bar, for entering in the Journal of the House, for the year 1653, these words: "This day His Excellency the Lord General Cromwell dissolved this House." Which words the Parliament voted a forgery, and demanded of him how they came to be entered. He answered that they were his own handwriting, and that he did it by virtue of his office and the practice of his predecessors, and that the intent of the practice was to let posterity know how such and such a Parliament was dissolved, whether by the command of the king, or by their own neglect, as the last House of Lords was, and that to this end he had said and writ that it was dissolved by his Excellence the Lord General, and that for the word dissolved he never at that time did hear of any other term, and desired pardon if he would not dare to make a word himself, which it was 6 years after before they came themselves to call it an interruption. But they were so little satisfied with this answer that they did choose a committee to report to the House whether this crime of Mr. Scoble's did come within the Act of Indemnity or no. Thence I went with Muddyman to the coffee house, and gave 18 pence to be entered of the club. Thence into the hall, where I heard from certain that Monk was coming to London, and that Bradshaw's lodgings were preparing for him. Thence to Mrs. Jemima's, and found her in bed, and some was afraid that it would prove the smallpox. Thence back to Westminster Hall, where I heard how Sir Vane was this day voted out of the house, and to sit no more there, and that he would retire himself to his house at Raby, and also all the rest of the 9 officers that had their commissions formerly taken away from them were commanded to their farthest houses from London during the pleasure of the Parliament. Here I met with quartermaster of my lord's troops and his clerk, Mr. Jennings, and took them home and gave a bottle of wine and the remainder of my collar of brawn, and so good night. After that came in Mr. Hawley, who told me that I was missed this day at my office, and that tomorrow I must pay all the money that I have, at which I was put to a great loss how I should get money to make up my cash, and so went to bed in great trouble. January the 10th, Tuesday. Went out early, and in my way met with Greatorex, and at an alehouse he showed me the first sphere of wire that ever he made, and indeed it was very pleasant. Went to Mr. Crews and borrowed £10, and so to my office and was able to pay my money. Thence into the hall, and meeting the quartermaster, Jennings, and Captain Ryder, we 4 went to a cook's to dinner. Thence Jennings and I into London, it being, through heat of the sun, a great thaw and dirty, to show our bills of return. And coming back, drank a pint of wine at the Star in Cheapside. So to Westminster, overtaking Captain Oakshott in his silk cloak, whose sword got hold of many people in walking. Thence to the coffee house, where were a great confluence of gentlemen, Mr. Harrington, Pulteney Chairman, Gold, Dr. Petty, and so on, were admirable discourse till at 9. Thence with Doling to Mother Lambs, who told me how this day Scott was made intelligencer, and that the rest of the members that were objected against last night, their business were to be heard that day's Senate. Thence I went home and wrote a letter, and went to Harper's, and stayed there till Tom carried it to the postboy at Whitehall. So home to bed. Wednesday, January the 11th. Being at Will's with Captain Barker, who hath paid me £300 this morning at my office, in comes my father, and with him I walked, and left him at Mr. Joyce's, and went myself to Mr. Crewe's, but came too late to dine, and therefore, after a game at shuttlecocks with Mr. Walgrave and Mr. Edwards, I returned to my father, and taking him from Mr. Joyce's, who was now abroad himself, we inquired of a porter, and by his direction went to an alehouse, where after a cup or two we parted. I went towards London, and in my way went in to see Crowley, who was now grown a very great lion and very tame. Thence to Mr. Stevens with a pair of silver snuffers, and bought a pair of shears to cut silver, and so homewards again. From home I went to see Mrs. Jemima, who was in bed and now granted to have the smallpox. Back again, and went to the coffee house, but tarried not, and so home. Thursday, January the 12th. I drink my morning draught at Harper's with Mr. Shepley and a seaman, and so to my office, where Captain Holland came to see me and appointed a meeting in the afternoon. Then I wrote letters to Hinchingbrook, and sealed them at Will's, and after that went home. And thence to the Half Moon, where I found the captain and Mr. Billingsley and Newman, a barber, where we were very merry, and had the young man that plays so well on the Welsh harp. Billingsley paid for all. Thence home, and finding my letters this day not gone by the carrier, I new sealed them. But my brother Tom coming, we fell into discourse about my intention to feast the Joyces. I sent for a bit of meat for him from the cook's, and forgot to send my letters this night. So I went to bed, and in discourse broke to my wife what my thoughts were concerning my design of getting money. Friday, the 13th, January. Coming in the morning to my office, I met with Mr. Fage, and took him to the Swan. He told me how High Hasselrig and Morley, the last night began at my Lord Mayor's, to exclaim against the city of London, saying that they have forfeited their charter, and how the Chamberlain of the city did take them down, letting them know how much they were formerly beholding to the city and such. He also told me that Monk's letter that came to them by the sword-bearer was a cunning piece, and that which they did not much trust to, but they were resolved to make no more applications to the Parliament, nor to pay any money, unless the secluded members be brought in or a free Parliament chosen. Thence to my office, where nothing to do. So to Will's with Mr. Pinckney, who invited me to their feast at his hall the next Monday. Thence I went home and took my wife and dined at Mr. Wade's, and after that we went and visited Capua. From thence home again, and my wife was very unwilling to let me go forth, but with some discontent would go out if I did, and I going forth towards Whitehall, I saw she followed me, and so I stayed and took her round through Whitehall, and so carried her home angry. Thence I went to Mrs. Jemima's, and found her up and merry, and that it did not prove the smallpox, but only the swine-pox. So I played a game or two at cards with her, and so to Mr. Vine's, where he and I and Mr. Hudson played half a dozen things, there being there Dick's wife and her sister. After that I went home and found my wife gone abroad to Mrs. Hunt's, and came in a little after me, and so to bed. And so we there shall also put Mr. Pepys to rest. I find interesting commentary. They are in a situation. The government without funds, divided. None of them work to do, borrowing money from each other to pay one another. Poxes there will be a plague shortly coming. It's an interesting time Pepys found himself in, and one that I think we all can sympathize with. That, my friends, is the end of our hour. I look forward to seeing all of you again next week, where we shall again revisit wonderful works of English. I am the storyteller, and I thank you for joining me here today. Until next time.